Good morning. Good morning. I cannot believe that we are entering into our 9th week of this fearless food freedom journey. I hope you guys have been learning so much and that you're having lots of fun and that you just continue to enjoy this journey. So I know we're about to start really wrapping things up. We're going to go through the last chapters today to allow you to have the weekend to really prep for your last week, next week. But I don't want you to look at it as the end, all right? Instead, I want you to see it as the beginning of your journey and of this journey, because it is a continual process. As we pull away one layer, another layer becomes revealed, right? I mean, heck, I have learned even more about myself during this study of, wanting to be able to help you guys, to support you. And I've had layers come undone, and it's just been beautiful and amazing. So like I had said last week, next Friday, I will wrap us up with our final, it will be the end of our 9 weeks. And I'm going to wrap us up with a little bit about why I'm so passionate about helping women and girls to become free and fearless with their food, as well as just their bodies with the beauty of who we are, right? So let's dive in. First, the oils that we're going to use for this week are peace and balance. I thought it was super fitting, Monday or Tuesday having been the BOGO of balance and peace. So mine are both already, I have my roller, it in the roller, and so it already has the fractionated coconut oil. And I'm grabbing my balance, putting a drop of my balance with the peace. All right. And we're going to rub. I really like getting it warm because it helps us really feel that energy. So then we're going to take some deep breaths. Isn't that awesome? Oh my goodness. So love these two oils. Makes me want to just go and relax now. Because I'm super relaxed. All right, we're going to go through the slow down diet first. This week, it is the metabolic power of the sacred. I have to tell you, it was so tempting to want to do this chapter with you first. Because it was everything. It summarized everything, but I knew that in order for any of us to really and truly grasp the beauty of this final chapter is to have gone through all of the other chapters, okay? So, the metabolic power of the sacred. Have you ever had a religious, divine, or extraordinary experience that affected you deeply? One that left you feeling renewed, reborn, transformed in body or spirit. One that couldn't be explained, yet you know it happened. If so, then you surely experienced the metabolic power of the sacred. Because each of us is a radiant soul moving through life's journey in a biological spacesuit. Every soul experience is registered within as a metabolic event. Really sit with that. Every soul experience is registered within as a metabolic event. So he writes, sacred metabolism is the chemistry ignited in the body when we are infused by the divine, by our Lord, because the divine is the source of power behind all powers. The chemistry created when we experience the divine supersedes all known laws of the body. Some of the ways that sacred metabolism may be revealed in the body include prayer, fasting, meditation, experiences in nature, sports, music, dance, a sweat lodge even, artistic pursuits, sleeplessness, illness, recovery, near-death experiences, transformational experiences, stressful events, war, injury, hunting, grief, falling in love, and religious rituals of every variety. So think about it. Some of the ways that the sacred metabolism may be revealed. He mentions positive and negative, right? Because who wants to experience injury or war? But yet there's something to experience in it. When the metabolic power of the sacred is activated in the body, a portal is opened to a fantastic assortment of biological empowerments that would otherwise have no entry point. So our 8 sacred metabolizers. The question that's certainly worth asking is this: how can we engage the metabolic power of the sacred? In what ways can we reliably court its powers? So he suggests that the sacred has its own terms that are available to all in this time and place. And those terms are this: love, truth, courage, commitment, compassion, forgiveness, faith, and surrender. These 8 sacred metabolizers, and no doubt there are more, are sacred because such soul qualities bring us closer to the heart of the divine, to the intelligence that created us. By embodying them, we become more like the source from whence we came. When activated in our system, the 8 sacred metabolizers can produce profound healings and powers, metabolic breakthroughs, and rejuvenating effects on body and spirit. Essentially, these 8 metabolizers have been classically viewed as qualities or traits, not material quantities unto themselves. Yet, he wants to dare us to say that every sacred metabolizer is both a force and a substance. E equals mc squared. Somewhere in the body, love molecules squirt about when feelings of love are activated. Perhaps it's a class of chemicals, or maybe there's a central love molecule around which the others gather and carouse. I love how he writes that. It's just so beautiful. He goes on throughout this chapter. I mean, I could go on and on with this chapter. I probably could read this entire chapter to you. So I really encourage you to read it and share about it. At the top of page 162, he puts, just as the biblical God proclaimed, "Let there be light," and it was created, so too do we create ourselves moment to moment. When you say, "Let there be anger," the body instantly builds a universe of anger within. When we say, "Let there be kindness," kindness chemistry is fashioned in a like manner. So these are just really powerful things to think about. When the real life requirements of the 8 sacred metabolizers are not met, the body withers and weakens, loses integrity, and invites disease upon itself, calling forth whatever symptoms are necessary to alert us to the soul lesson that is hungering for nourishment and attention. So this is really super important to understand that there are lessons even in our pain and in our struggles. He writes at the top of page 166, to truly transform and heal the ailments of the body, the soul perspective needs to be understood. For this reason, he'd like to suggest a way to view metabolism from the vantage point of the sacred. It's a radical rewrite of how we view the body. Our reigning story about health is that disease is bad, that it's the enemy, it's the problem, the poison, any unwanted symptom, excess weight, low energy, digestive pains, the gamut, right, are squarely seen as our adversary. But he wants to propose this idea. Whatever you believe is the disease is actually the cure. Whatever bodily concern you believe is the problem, in the soul's reality is the solution. he goes on to explain that this may sound strange to some, all right, but that the ancient Greeks believed that the symptom was seen as a visitation from the gods. This is for Greeks, remember, that they, did worshiping to lowercase gods. That whatever afflicted the body was divine, a holy messenger, a whispered secret from the guardian spirits, alerting us that the soul was in need of a course correction. So the ailments of the body were really cures for the soul, and whatever cured the soul was the fundamental and necessary medicine for the body. So by addressing the symptoms, listening to them, honoring them, being with them, welcoming their divinity, the soul would find its way through the mists and the gray clouds raining poison on the body, would then lift. So he gives an example of, let's say, low energy. What is the message from low energy, from lethargy, from fatigue? He writes, interestingly enough, any disorder that brings us low energy is often the only way to slow us down. Speed is the disease. Low energy is the cure. It's a remedy for when we aren't attending to our deeper needs. Like it or not, the low energy brings us into compliance with the slower pace of the soul. And I love this. Page 167. Even God rested after 6 days of creative work. Do you think you've got a better system? Think about that. Why are we in such a broken world and in such a broken state, right? In such a disarray and disordered thinking, disordered eating, disordered entertainment, disordered everything, because we're not stopping to rest. God set that example for us, but yet we're not heeding it. We'll heed a lot of other things, but we're not heeding it. No matter what the cause, whatever we consider the disease is still the cure. Even if your fatigue is catalyzed by a food allergy, the wrong diet, a parasite, poor sleep, you can only find the remedy to restore your body to health once you slow down, pay attention, care for yourself, look for help, and restore. It matters little to the soul what mechanism it employs to alert us to its calling. So, excess weight. What would you imagine excess weight to be a cure for? For many, it's a wake-up call for a life out of balance. It asks us to look at our relationship to the earth, to each other, to ourselves. Excess weight is a companion to industrialized nations and to third world people eating mass-produced food. It's the harbinger of a collective experiment gone wrong. It's the cure for an ignorance that would have us believe we can move as a society at a blinding pace, a speed at which it's difficult to see the results of our actions. Excess weight asks us to examine how a nation of affluence can have children within its borders who starve. It begs us to look deeper at the paradox of being overfed and undernourished. It asks us to look at the hidden and heavy load that's weighing us down. Yes, he writes on page 168 at the top, excess weight can result from eating too much and exercising too little. But these seemingly simple causes and their easy solutions are ghosts. They speak nothing as to why our behaviors are out of our control in the first place. They fail to address what ails the soul and thus prove themselves to be ineffective remedies for our deeper concern. So who really wants to exercise out of punishment and pain, right? Obesity and excess weight are profoundly relative. Scientists can't decide whether or not being overweight is a disease, a symptom, a risk factor for other diseases, a non-issue that will have no ill effects on health, or perhaps even a slightly positive indicator for longevity. The answer, of course, is that carrying extra weight is all of these. The results of numerous studies continue to vary because the possibilities are truly limitless. You can be carrying around a generous amount of fat for all the right reasons, all the wrong ones, or a swirl of the two. So then he goes on to the sacred nourishment. We can certainly call upon the power of the sacred in practical ways to influence the metabolism of a meal. A great place to begin is to observe how we use our spiritual power to either bless or curse. Prayer, belief, and love can cause changes locally or at a distance in people, plants, food, water, and various living organisms. We don't know exactly how this works, but we know that it works. Many of us can feel when we are being cursed, quote unquote, by others through judgment, slander, or gossip. These are real psychophysiological impressions that have been captured via the broadcast and reception capabilities of the heart and transduced into the chemistry of the body. There is a wonderful science called heart math that you can see how emotions affect our energy, affect our heart, affect our brain. A negative self-judgment such as I'm fat, or I'm not beautiful, or I'm not enough as I am, is a curse. When uttered silently and continuously over, the hex takes hold. It's a literal neurochemical instruction to the brain that is modulated by the hypothalamus, endocrine, immune, and neuropeptide networks and brought into bodily reality. It's a metabolic command sequence that can be aimed at self or other. But when we bless, we allow God to pour through our heart, pumping the chemicals of affirmation and life through our vasculature. We send unseen forces into the electromagnetic field around and beyond us, and we send them non-locally across time and space. At the very least, blessing creates a physiologic relaxation response, and hence all the metabolic advantages this state offers, from increased digestion force to enhanced calorie burning efficiency. So for these reasons, a prayer before a meal makes nutritional and spiritual sense. Give thanks, being nourished and provided for. If making a prayer of gratitude for your food is uncomfortable, just add a pinch of humility, he writes. All right, then he goes on to talk about how ritual is really helpful in another grounding way of tapping into the metabolic power of the sacred. Rituals of cooking, rituals of tea or coffee, rituals of offering, rituals of medicine, such as don't just swallow your vitamins or prescriptions. Receive them. Acknowledge them. Consciously acknowledge your reasons for taking them. Give thanks. Infuse them with the power of your belief and ask for the healing force. I thought that was so powerful when I read that years ago, because I was at a place with my health, with my thyroid storm and all that stuff. I was taking anywhere from 20 to 40 pills a day on top of liquid stuff. I felt like every hour I was turning around, I was taking 5 to 10 more things, and it was exhausting. And I remember going to them sometimes and feeling so negative, just thinking, oh, okay, I gotta take one more thing. Or if I'd miss one, I'd get really, really worried and really nervous of, oh my goodness, I'm not gonna heal if I don't, because I missed XYZ. And when I started really receiving them and thanking God for them, I noticed a shift in my entire being about it. Rituals of beauty and hygiene. Let go of judging how God created and crafted you. Allow yourself to be thankful for your body and its true beauty. Let all your acts of beautifying be an offering of thanks for a gift that will somehow be no more. When you're body brushing, your body brushing, and instead of looking at what you think are flaws, look at yourself. Look at how you were sculpted. Look at how beautiful you are as you're body brushing. All right, he goes on, let's see, he goes through even substances and stuff. But I want to get to his tasks, the primary tasks for this week. Forgiveness, the most potent sacred metabolizer. The most powerful and life-changing strategy that he's seen that liberates energy, banishes unwanted health habits, rejuvenates the body is simply this: forgiving. Some of the really big things, how many of us feel anger, blame, judgment, betrayal, abuse, woundedness? Those are all holding toxins in our system. The most poisonous chemicals on the planet are the ones that we self-produce deep inside our beings. Though our poison is intended for another, it nevertheless lives within, corroding the body with acidic intent. Forgiveness heals big time. Our most intelligent strategies in diet, exercise, medicine, and healing are ultimately ineffectual in the cloudy chemistry of unforgiveness. So really dig deep this week about any unforgiveness that you have. Forgiving and healing. Be absolutely thorough in rummaging through your past and present to locate all such criminals. Include all appropriate relatives, friends, lovers, presidents, generalized groups of people, men, women, all sorts, right? Once your list is complete, check it over to make sure it includes the 3 people you likely need to forgive most: your parents and yourself. If you haven't already figured it out, your next task is to forgive everyone. This is hard work. It takes courage, and it's the most rewarding dietary strategy you could ever imagine. That's because forgiveness is a sacred metabolic act. It releases the death grip you've placed on your cells and ignites a metachemistry that opens the body so that it can receive nourishment in a whole new way. There's no special secret or trick to accomplishing the heroic feat of forgiveness. You just take a deep breath and you do it. I remember the amazing freedom I experienced when I forgave probably my biggest or the most profound wound that stuck out in my head. The most profound violation that stuck out in my head. There had been multiple violations to me, but the one that stuck out the most in my head, when I forgave that individual, and not only forgave him, but embraced love for him and lifted him in prayer continually, I knew I was free. I was truly free to be me. He writes, for extra credit, make a complete list of everything that remains unforgiven in you toward your parents and yourself. Note the degree of resistance you might have in doing this exercise. This is a secret indicator that the exercise is good medicine. What is it in you and in your parents that you still don't accept, that you still judge, still want to change, or still try to sweep under the rug? Once you feel complete in this inventory, compassionately love and forgive. Acknowledge to yourself that this may be an ongoing practice, perhaps lifelong. Along the way, note the changes in your metabolism. So I want you to really sit with forgiveness for this week. That is, he talks about depression, fatigue, digestive health, exercise, weight loss, so many different things. But I think the big one for us to really sit with is forgiving and healing. It takes courage, he writes, and it's the most rewarding dietary strategy you could ever imagine. We read this, right? That's because forgiveness is a sacred metabolic act. It releases the death grip you've placed on your own cells and ignites a metachemistry that opens the body so that it can receive nourishment in a whole new way. There's no special secret to accomplish this feat of forgiveness. You just take a deep breath and you do it. All right, and I'm repeating this, I know, because I want us to really dive and really understand that this is a huge soul lesson for us. That when we dive real deep and find the soul lesson that others were helping you learn with your wounds and your betrayal ways, you get to thank them for helping you stretch to your spiritual limits and acknowledge that you are indeed a better person and have grown from that action. All right? It's profound. It's strong. I wouldn't trade any of my past, any of my hurts and wounds and traumas for the world. And I can say that honestly because I'm a better me because of it. Any of you who watch Joyce Meyer or have ever heard Joyce Meyer and her story, I mean, you would think this is one woman who would definitely be like, you know, life handed me a bowl of horribleness. Does she probably still struggle with some stuff? Probably, because it's a journey for all of us. But she also has seen the blessings through all of it, that she would not be who she is today if it wouldn't have been for her terrible childhood. So that is our big wow at the end of this chapter, at the end of this book, right? So the key lessons to focus on: our connection to the sacred can access little understood yet potent metabolic changes. Love, truth, courage, commitment, compassion, forgiveness, faith, surrender, and other sacred qualities are potent metabolic enhancers. When life is calling these qualities from us, they act as healing catalysts in the body. We have the power to bless or curse, thus affecting energetically and non-locally our food, ourselves, and our fellow humans. Ritual accesses the metachemistry of the sacred. When we treat a food, drug, or the body as profane, the chemistry of pain and confusion is released. Treating these as sacred reveals a healing and transformational chemistry. The cure for our metabolic ills are often found within the heart of those very challenges. Indeed, the illness is the cure. So let's see how we're going to unpack this in Sonia's Fearless. This chapter is called Fearless Love, a Separate Peace. So on page 198, she writes, Forbidden Food. As we first saw in Eden and later in the wilderness, wanderings, natural appetites are a frequent and effective weapon of the devil. As we see in the Gospel of Matthew, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. 4:3. Here we truly are able to access the metabolism of the divine, and that's what we're going to unpack with this chapter of Fearless. Jesus knows the body cannot nourish the soul. He understands how feeding the body indiscriminately can impoverish the soul. Did you know the Bible says the primary reasons Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed were pride, gluttony, and laziness, not homosexual activities? So here he talks about pride, gluttony, and laziness, right? So gluttony, a lot of times we think of gluttony as just overeating. And we talked about overeating just now in the slow down diet. But it also can be about, not taking in the nourishment of our food, of, again, not slowing down so that we can see how we need to nourish ourselves, whether it's through pausing and taking a fast, or whether it's through eating particular foods to heal our bodies physically to be able to support our spiritual health and our spiritual journey. On page 200, His humility in waiting and refusing to assert power was what shocked Judas so completely. Jesus teaches us that fasting is as wings whereby the soul is carried upward to celestial things. Biblical humility is not groveling in a lack of dignity or worth. Jesus shows us humility is harder than the deprecating portrayal of one's gifts and is much more than a simple awareness of one's limitations. Humility, as exemplified in Jesus, is suffering limitation and asking God to provide, resting in God's will that I be inadequate of myself rather than attempting to be self-sufficient. So as we continue to unpack this chapter, I think you're going to be able to see some of what and why I'm bridging this and how I'm bridging this. Shock and awe. The first temptation proves Jesus is a man of faith. The second, daring him to prove God's care. The devil now quotes a psalm. The accusation lurks beneath. The Bible does say that those who trust in God will receive his protection. It does not condone the presumption of taking reckless risks or insisting on miracles to test whether God will keep his word. An important point on this temptation. Satan's knowledge of and use of Scripture to tempt is the most critical reason the sword of the Spirit is sheathed in the church of history. The church is the foundation of the truth, not the Bible. For in the devil's hands, any verse can take on any believable meaning and be used for an evil. When the temptation is, will I presume on God's love? Will I force my right? Will I attempt to be seen rather than wait on God's leadership to reveal me? Jesus patiently waits and loves with abandon. Once Satan is defeated on the pinnacle of the temple, he takes Jesus to the mountain. So I think that by unpacking the second temptation, it helps us understand that even when we think we might be approaching something for the right reasons, approaching food, say that we're supposed to feast, we're supposed to, celebrate. What's the motivation behind our celebration? We're supposed to fast. What's the motivation behind our fast? Let's see what else I circled for us. So on page 207, Satan tempts Jesus in a subtler, more serious capacity. Scriptural worship means to sacrifice, to serve, and to obey. The Jesus we worship and emulate is both body and spirit, so that spirit-only invisible worship is as untrue as outward-only physical worship. True worshipers worship by abandonment to love, sacrificing in obedience to God from a heart of love. If Satan can offer world domination with all its power, ease, politics, and intrigue, what was this temptation really about? What does Satan want Jesus to do? Is he advocating a warlike political messiah, one of power and control rather than service? Maybe he is. Maybe Satan is simply asking, is that what God is like? But what if the temptation is as simple as expedience? What if it's about eliminating the painful waiting, hurtful misunderstanding, arduous difficulties, laborious suffering, and agonizing death of a slow ascent? Think about how that fits beautifully in the metabolic power of the divine, right? But how he talks about how, when we stop to think about our hurts and our pains, our illnesses, and thinking of them as the cure rather than, the illness, it's the same here. When we we think of the sufferings as woes and we try to hurry through it, we don't get to the fruit. Satan was offering all the earthly glories of a kingdom without the weight, without the innumerable sacrifices. This third temptation echoes Adam's power grab in the garden. When the temptation is, will I compromise my shortcutting, avoiding the sacrifices and suffering necessary to reach the promise, rather than embrace the cross that precedes resurrection? Jesus lays his will in the Father's hands and loves with abandon. At the sight of this monster of pride, Jesus banishes the devil by quoting Deuteronomy 6:13. Jesus says to him, "Begone, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve." The original Hebrew of Deuteronomy 6:13 is rendered fear. Thou shalt fear the Lord. This is the fear of the Lord that is the gift of the Holy Spirit in Isaiah. For the Jew, the word fear signifies reverence, service, obedience, and adoration, the whole worship of God. Think about how we've distorted the word fear, right? Dear one, what you fear is what you serve, and what you serve is what you worship. Love is the only fulfillment, page 209. But Jesus voluntarily undergoes hunger and refuses contrived spectacles and worldly political power. Why did Christ vanquish the tempter for us? From Hebrews 4:15. For we have not a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sinning. Peace is Jesus. Jesus shows us that conquering fear, anxiety, and depression happens from the humility of the cross. So as we draw this journey close, let's look back throughout this chapter or throughout this book how we've conquered our demons and love with abandon as fearless women for God, right? And this is on page 211. Fear is not of God. And I'm just going to unpack, she has many, but there were 6 that I felt really were relevant to the chapter of the Slow Down Diet. Fear is not of God. To sin is to believe a lie. Re-entering a dependent relationship with God begins the renewal. Satan's lie is that I am unlovable and worthless. Spiritual power and authority rests in humility. And trusting God for all my needs, waiting on him, and submitting to his timing and provision is abandonment to love and the key to fearlessness. So really unpack that this week as you wrap up your 9th week of this journey of becoming a fearless food freedom warrior. And embrace all the beauty that God has surrounded you with, has ensued you with, has embodied you with. Embrace it. Embrace how beautiful and amazing you are. And look at food with love and with nourishment rather than fear and frustration. And I look forward to sharing more with you next week. Please continue to share in this group. This group is here to support us, to be able to encourage each other and to love each other. So you guys have a beautiful and blessed, amazing day, and I look forward to sharing with you more soon. All right, take care and God bless.